everybody, and welcome to another exciting, fun-filled, expeditious episode of Radiorama, where, as the name implies, I show you how to work on radios. And today we have a 1934 American Bosch model 460. It's a multi-band set with this nifty chart that changes. 3 different bands. It is a 7-tube set with a power transformer, a rather thick-looking power transformer, actually. For those of you not familiar with American Bosch, it is basically the American division of Bosch of Germany. And Bosch had a brief period in the U.S. where they had an American electronics division, and they would manufacture radios, electronics. The primary business over here was manufacturing magnetos for the automobile industry here, because it was massive. You had, Ford, General Motors, gigantic factories, and to get a piece of that action, they set up shop here. It wasn't always a cozy relationship. Once it started getting towards World War II time period, the U.S. government was not super thrilled about the Bosch family's super cozy relationship with the Nazi government. And so all of their operations were forced out of existence, except, ironically, pretty much every single American aircraft that flew in World War II were using Bosch, and originally Bosch designed American adopted magnetos. And so we beat the Germans literally partially with some of their own technology. These radios were made in the U.S. I believe they were made in Massachusetts, out of almost entirely American parts. So it's German only in name only, and the rest of it's American. I've worked on one of these just maybe not this model, but a similar era a few months ago, and the reason I'm sounding a little bit down in the dumps is because the last time I worked on one of these, it was a royal pain in the ass. My ignorant assumption is that there must have been some German engineers that came over to the U.S. and said, look, you could engineer something the easy way or the more practical way, or you can engineer something the less practical way or the more difficult way. And so the last one I worked on, I had a couple of phenolic boards with all the capacitors mounted on it, and they were extremely difficult to get at. I am 99% sure that's going to be the same situation here when I pull this out. It's old enough to where I do not trust trying to plug it in to see if it works, because I don't see any evidence. You don't know what's going to be inside until you pull it out. But this looks like the original electrolytic capacitor. It's interesting. It's a Magnavox brand capacitor, and that's when there was a time period when Magnavox provided also a lot of electrical components to other radio manufacturers. I believe one of their primary earlier things they started with were speakers, and so they provided a lot of speakers to some of the earlier radio manufacturers. Probably a pretty sensitive set. We've got a whole bunch of IF cans in here. We got 3 here, and then 2 more over there. So even though the tube count is somewhat modest, I'm going to guess this is probably a very sensitive set. I do like the fact that the plug to the speaker is not hardwired in. It's easier to pull out. Let's see. Looks like we have 2 of the 4 screws still there. So I'll need to pull the chassis out, detach the speaker, pull the knobs, and we'll see what's going on underneath. What kind of horror show am I up against? All right, so we got the chassis out of the cabinet. That wasn't too big of a deal. And now it's time to see what kind of horror upon horrors are we getting ourselves into. And yep, this is not as bad as the last one I worked on. The last one I worked on, this board was very difficult to get at, but it looks like they're all mounted here. It's a lot easier to get at. I don't know what it is with American Bosch sets. Most American sets, you'd have like a fairly light waxed capacitor. It's very easy to read the values on it. Not so much with these guys. They're like these nasty cigar tarry looking things. And luckily I've worked on a few of these. I can pretty much just guess the values at this point of what those are. A lot of those are just nothing more than tone control caps. It looks like we have another board here, and it has a few capacitors on it. The electrolytic is original. In fact, save for maybe this one and this one. It's basically all original. It's not really been worked on that much. So I found this whole mechanical tuning aspect here rather fascinating. You've got this like geared tooth thing that pulls that up and down. Now, it's a little bit stiff, but I can oil that up. Also, it's interesting here. Let's check this out. There's no tuning string. I have never seen a tuning mechanism like that in my life, and I've worked on hundreds of radios. It's very weird. And it looks like in the electrolytics it says we have positive and negative is red and green. And then we have, what is this? Is that the negatives? The can and black. 1, 2, 3, 4 values. 8, 4, 20, and 20. Green, red, black, can. That is super weird. Does that mean that the can is there's a capacitor that has a negative positive? I'll need to pull the schematic. I don't know what all this paper shit is here. Let's see. Maybe that's on there to keep the dust out. I don't know. So where do we start? I need to pull the schematic because I'm not really sure what any of that means. I want to make sure I'm not going to install these capacitors ass backwards, because you'll know they'll explode and you'll be sorry. Well, I looked at this schematic, and then I'm looking also at the bottom of the electrolytic, and I don't know why, but it seems like the label... There's ducks in the garage. They come in here and they want food, so I guess I gotta go feed them. Miss Duck! Don't crap in the garage. Anyway, there's 3 positives, and the chassis is ground. All right, quit it. All right. Oh my God, like, he's in here too. All right, I gotta take care of this situation before they crap all over my garage. I probably shouldn't be doing this, but for some reason they really like crappy dry cat food. But whatever, they're having baby chicks, so they need it. All right, back to work on radios. All right, we'll start the recapping process. We have these 3 leads here. The first thing I do is I look around the chassis to see where there are some grounding points, because that's going to be the ground for our new replacement capacitors, which are these. It calls for a 4, an 8, and a 10 microfarad cap, I believe, if I remember. I'm just going to put 10s in there. It's not going to hurt anything to put something a little bit larger. In fact, it'll cut down the ripple even more. They just went with the cheapest they could get away with back then. Now, granted, if you put a huge value in and it's in the rectifier, that can stress out the rectifier a little bit on warm-up, but I don't worry about it too much. So what I do is I cut 1 positive at a time and solder it. Well, I attach the negative of the electrolytics, the new ones, which are this guy's with the stripes, and I get that as close as I can to the mounting surface so it's not going to wiggle around. And then the positive will get soldered, which is this old wire, to this lead. And we'll repeat that on all 3 of those guys, and then we'll bring it up on the Variac and see if it's got life, even though I'm very suspect about some of these capacitors. They look like they have blown open on the ends, so we'll need to bring it up slowly on a metered variac to make sure we don't have any shorts. All right, so we have the 3 electrolytics as well as 2 other critical caps installed. Go ahead and turn it on. What I'm going to do is bring it up a little bit on my isolation transformer, and when it's not plugged in, that would help. Gotta plug it in. There we go. All right, it's on. What I'm looking for is current draw. Like if it starts to go wacky, it's about 50%. It's drawing about what I would expect. Let me see what's going on over here. Okay, the pilot light is on. That means probably the filament string's good. Just gonna let that sit there for a minute. Don't do what I'm doing, by the way. I'm just feeling these, see if they're hot. They're not. Okay, good. Voltage. Yeah, it's doing good. I don't think anything's critically haywire with it. Let's see. All right, I hear a buzzing noise. Makes me wonder if I indeed installed one of these capacitors ass backwards. Should be getting something. Well, it turns out that I had the wrong... This is the volume control. I didn't realize that. But still, we've got some not great problems happening. Well, got the country music going on. That's not the radio. That indicates a short somewhere. It's either a dirty tube connection, or it could be a shorted tube, or it could be a shorted cap, which I would not be surprised at because these look god-awful. But we do have B+. There's so much debris in this thing. I'm going to flip it over and do a quick wiggle of the tube, see if that does anything, and then I'm going to start replacing capacitors because I'm going to have to anyway. One of those puppies is probably shorted, so might as well go ahead and do it. Well, I fixed a short, but we've got a very nasty, loud hum. Apparently the radio works, but it's buzzing loudly. First thing I'm going to do is test the tubes. You could have a gassy output tube. That's very likely, very possible. That's the easiest thing to do when it comes to diagnosing radios. A lot of people will be, oh my golly, I got to replace all the capacitors to get it working. It's like, no, you don't. You test the tubes. Got to do it anyway. Might as well get it over with, and you can clean the tubes at the same time. All right, first tube up is the output tube. Luckily, no gas. If it had been gassy, then that orange LED light would have stayed on, but it's not. As far as emissions goes, about 40, and I believe the minimal value is 50. So it's probably okay. It's a little weak, so I'll need to replace it, but it's not our problem tube, if there is any problem tubes. All right, all the tubes tested okay. There's a few weak ones that I'm going to replace. But I think I'm just going to start replacing capacitors. I mean, these look pretty sick. I'll start replacing the grossest ones, and then, like these guys, and then see if there's any incremental improvements. Just wanted to show this. This is my cheap and dirty method that I used last time on one of these. Because at first I was like, how am I going to be able to clip these out of here and have any lead? Last time I found that if you just kind of lift up on them, kind of like gently, See that? The leads just pull right out of them. And you can just solder your new capacitor to one end of that versus having to take this crusty board out. So anyway, there you go. Cheap and dirty trick of the day. Okay, well, I'm partially through the recap, enough to at least plug it back in again and see if we have any improvements. I think another thing I'm going to do before I do that is clean some of the contacts. So again, we're looking for shorts. I'll tell you what, these wafer switches are pretty beefy, I must say. All right. That is hard to turn. Clearly have to lubricate all of that to make it work better, but what I'm going to do is try to hook this up again and see if there's any improvement.
When it comes to handling border issues, and that's your Washington Roundup. More.
Saw how good he was. You need another player like Pascal Siakam or OG Anunoby. You need a really good big in Brook Lopez, and then you need Shaden Sharp to develop. Now you got Dame, Shaden Sharp, Jeremy Grant, Pascal Siakam, and Brook Lopez, and a bunch of depth. You probably turn Anthony Simons into somebody.
Still got a little of a hum, but it's improving a little bit. There's still a lot of old shitty caps in there that need to be replaced, so we'll keep hammering away at it. All right, we got a little bit more of them replaced. This whole board's been replaced. This guy, that guy, 3 on this board. We have 2 more capacitors left. Might as well just try it out. I'm hoping there's not something else going on, because I would have thought the humming would have stopped by now, but we'll just have to see.
At 11:30 a.m. in San Jose. It'll be a fun early afternoon of food and finance. Of course, any
officials David Guthrie and Brian Forte, a few words for each other before they hand the ball to Reed with some backcourt pressure coming from Denver. Reeves will get it into D'Angelo Russell, who's been
working better still. A few more caps to replace, and we'll give it a test. That'll probably be it for the evening. It's taking quite a bit of time to replace all those capacitors because they're difficult to get at. All right, well, it is Brothers Night. Me and my brother had Japanese food. He's cleaning up the interior of his windshield, and I figured, why is he doing that? Like, I can clean up the cabinet on the radio. I've recently discovered that, like, orange cleaner, like Gojo or Goop or whatever, does a great job of cleaning up the grime and crap that has accumulated on the surface over the last 90 or so years that this radio has been in existence. So I'm going to go over it with some orange cleaner, some Goop, clean it up a little bit. All right, welcome back to the third day of working on the, actually it's not the third day, I'm getting my radios confused. The second day of working on the American Bosch, and we've got all the caps, I believe, replaced. I don't see any others hiding anywhere. So I'm going to bring it up again and see if the radio is working okay. This time I'm going to not, we used the Variac, we know there's no shorts. And I think maybe the windings on the Variac are causing some of the hum. I've had that happen before. But now that all the capacitors are replaced, if there's still a hum, then I'll need to do some more sleuthing.
and seeing what they've chosen for Thanksgiving, and then I kind of go through the prime time. What I get.
Still got some hum happening here. It's pretty significant. It's like the electrolytic capacitors aren't cutting out all the ripple.
10 years are on the exact count. The team I'd say the first week of the schedule coming out, I think has been the team I've ended up taking every single year. It's one of those and I don't know what your strategy is with knockout pools. Everybody has a strategy, right? Whether it's protecting teams, people say, well,
seems commiserate with the tone control. That's kind of weird. Very odd problem. I'm not sure what could be happening here. Okay, I've tacked in some Whew, I didn't like that noise. What was that? Ooh boy, that's not a pleasant noise. I wonder if one of my tubes has come loose. I wasn't doing that a second ago. Alright, well, this is jerry-rigged, but I tacked in some more capacitance, and we eliminated most of the hum.
Another flag that just is...
Alright, that's better, but I need to tack in more capacitance. Let's see, what time is it? Oh, it's only 4. Let me fix that, and then I want to take the cabinet out and start working on it. It's kind of nice and sunny out there, and it'd be a good time to clean it up. Alright, so I've added higher capacitance electrolytics. I think that'll help further even out the buzzing noise. I actually only had 2 bigger electrolytics soldered in, so now all 3 are bigger. So let's try that out, and I think we might be okay. Famous last words. It's usually when I think things are going to go right, usually something blows up, so hopefully that won't happen this time. Alright, let's let her rip. The smoke comes pouring out. That 2A5 sure has a very bright filament compared to the others. There's a little bit of hum now. It's not bad.
Was it lacrosse? This guy might have been also one of the top 5 or top 10 lacrosse players ever. Syracuse is a legendary. Yeah. And yeah.
914-9149.
Problems going on with the world. There's even confusion within our church, but relevant radio is that...
You found the right place.
The kingdom. Instead of just telling people.
That's how good he was there. Coming up, tune in tonight for Game 2 of the NBA Eastern Conference Finals as the Celtics host the Heat.
Alright, I think we're in pretty good shape here, so now what I'm going to do is take the cabinet out. Start cleaning it up a little bit. Okay, so we got the cabinet outside here, and the chassis. Let me shove these paper towels in there. What I want to do first is get all the dust off of... You know, the chassis has actually gotten hardly any corrosion on it. It's in very good shape. And what I want to do is go over this with a paintbrush to get the loose stuff off. Then I'll go over it with my leaf blower, and then it'll get most of the dust out. I do this before I use anything wet, because, you know, if you go over with dry dust with a wet towel, it just turns into mud. And likewise, I want to get this grill cloth brushed up a little bit. Pretty dirty. Alright, as you saw what I started doing last night, I was using some Gojo hand cleaner. Actually, it's a Goop. Sorry, wrong brand. Same thing. It's like citrus-based hand cleaner. I'm going to get the remainder of this crap off of here. Alright, so this is after using more hand cleaner. Got a lot of the gunk off of it. I think what I'm going to do, this grill cloth looks really bad. I'm going to take the speaker and grill cloth out and try to clean the original grill cloth. And if I can't get it to clean up, I think this would look pretty good. It definitely would highlight some of the red tones in the finish. And plus I'll be able to clean up all this crap in the grill work. So let me go ahead and do that. And oh yeah, I need to leaf blower out the dust out of the chassis here. Alright, well I took the grill cloth out. Make sure this doesn't have any bleach in it. It does not. So I'm going to soak this with this cleaner. A lot of times when I do this, the stuff just absolutely disintegrates. I'm trying to kind of be gentle. Do this several times. And then lay it out somewhere flat, see if it'll dry and not shrink. Alright, well that actually looks a lot better. Like I said, some of this stuff shrinks when you wash it, but we'll see what happens. Maybe it won't this time. Alright, so grill cloth removed. I cleaned up some of this stuff here. Now it's time to go over the whole thing with Old English furniture stuff. It's sold in the US. I'm not sure if it's sold globally, but anyway, it works really well. You just put it on pretty liberally. And what this is going to do is even out the finish and make it look all uniform. And you'd be amazed what you can do even to some ratty looking finishes. There's a lot of people out there who, for some reason, if they see anything old that has even somewhat okay, decent finish with scratches on it, they'll refinish it. And you know, that's up to you. If you want to do that, it's fine. Some people really enjoy refinishing things. I just know I'm not very good at it, and plus this finish is in too good a shape, in my opinion, to do that, because once you strip an old finish off, and this is just my opinion, everyone has an opinion, once you strip an old finish off and you refinish it, you're never going to get that quote-unquote look back. Like it'll look like a refinished radio, unless you're just super good at it. And kind of from my experience, most people aren't, and I'm not. I'm pretty terrible at refinishing things. I only do it when I absolutely have no other choice and the piece is not valuable enough to send it off to one of our refinishing guys, because we do have a guy who does it, but he is like, I think, $15 to $20 an hour, and we're a non-profit, so we can't afford that really as much anyway, even though he does fantastic freaking work, much better than I could do. But you can see how much of an improvement that's made. Sure, there's a little wear around the knobs, but you know, like, so what? Damn thing's like 90 years old. I think it can afford to look a little bit worn. Like, if I looked this good when I was 90, if I'm 90, if I make it that long, I'd be absolutely thrilled. So, I'm gonna get in here and even go to all these little nooks and crannies and stuff, because you might as well do it now, since the grill cloth is out and drying. And it's little details like this that really make the difference and the overall impression that you'll get from people when they look at it. Still got some loosey-goosey strings hanging down from the old grill cloth, but you know, don't be afraid to use a lot of this Old English. Got my finger stuck in there, and I'm going to soak it several times with it and let it soak in for a little bit. Well, in my opinion, try to get this in the sun so you guys can see it better. It's looking a lot better. Now imagine what I'm going to do next is take my mechanical buffer and some car wax. I'm going to make this thing shine like a pretty penny, because it did come with a glossy finish. A lot of people, when they refinish these old radios, they refinish them with a satin because they think that's how they looked, because they think that the worn out kind of dull finish on their radios is representative. So I'm going to go over it with some Car wax. I usually get Meguiar's. Any old-fashioned car wax will do, but I like Meguiar's for some reason. Plus it smells like bananas. Alright, now here comes the next part, which is I loaded this buffing pad up with car wax. And we're going to do the whole thing like this. And just take your time, and you wouldn't believe how much dirt and grime this brings up. You see how filthy that already is? So that's going to brighten the finish up even more, and it's going to bring back the shine. Alright, while I'm waiting for the wax to dry on that thing, I'm going to clean the chassis. And I think it will clean up pretty. Be careful with your labels. I'm not going to get that wet. It's already disintegrated quite a bit. Alright, so the chassis cleaned up pretty well. And now I'm going to go in and lubricate all of the tuning gear here, so it's going to move nice and smoothly. There's bearings in the front and back of the tuning condenser. Let's lubricate this bearing here. I think it goes in the back too. Yep, it goes in the back. I'll lubricate this slider mechanism a little bit. Basically anything that moves. Let's see. Let's see if that works in. It does. It seems like it's turning pretty nicely now. Likewise, want to put a little bit on the shafts of the tone and volume controls. You don't have to do it, but it just makes things feel a lot nicer to the user. Let's see. Just put like a little drop on the end here, so that slides up and down just a little bit better. I think this could use a little bit as well. Ow, that hurts my hands. All right, let's try this. All right, it's turning a little bit better. It's not the easiest thing to turn, but that's probably by design. So, now that we've let the wax dry off, time to buff off the first layer of wax. All right, so I'm letting for the second coat of wax to dry. I put a new antenna wire in, and I'm going to install an audio input through the volume pot, which is mounted upside here. And I think what I'm going to do is use some metal tape to tape the cord down onto this to keep it from being yanked out. I really don't want to drill any holes that go up and through the chassis like that. That's just asking for more interference, so I'm going to do it on the outside here. And what we're going to do is we have these two resistors tied together. They're 33 ohm resistors. That'll put our right and left channels together. This is the bottom, or the negative, of the volume control, and this is the top, which is where the IF signal comes in. So I'm going to tack it on the positive, which is the right and left channel stuck together here, and then the negative here. Now, this is a transformer set, and so it is electrically isolated, but if this is a hot chassis set, you do not want to do this. You would need to go through an isolation transformer, because otherwise you could cause yourself to get zapped. So just saying that. If it's got a power transformer, probably good to go. Hot chassis set, do not do what I'm doing. You need to run through something first. Okay, we're testing the audio. Honestly, I feel like it's not got enough oomph, so I need to run a isolation transformer, ironically, to boost the signal to the volume control. So I have this problem with a lot of 30s sets. There's just not enough gain, so we can boost that a little bit. All right, that sounds better. Now I'll go remove the wax and the rest of the radio, and I think what I'm going to do is secure this here so no one can jerk it out of there. Okay, well, the fabric dried. It did shrink a little bit, but it didn't shrink bad enough to not fit here. So I'm going to put a little glue here. I'm not going to film it because it's very tedious, and then stick it back in there. All right, welcome to the third day of working on the Bosch and American Bosch, and I got it all back together again, and it's clear there's still a hum issue here.
So I'm just saying, you know, it's the way the league is.
So I have access to vast quantities of tubes here, and I'm thinking that one of these tubes might have an internal short, or it's gassy. That's my guess. I don't have some of these tubes, like 2A3s or whatever. So I'm going to go downstairs and get some. And if not, there's something else going on. I'm hoping it's not something going on with the power transformer. Either that or there's a short somewhere. Now, this is supposed to be an auction set, and we have a lot of things that we need to work on. And this time of year, you know, we need to get these out. And so if I can't totally solve it, I'll hand it off to one of the other techs and move on. We kind of tag team around here this time of year. But I hope to solve it. I am suspicious about one of those tubes in there that seemed like the filament was looking a little bit crazy, like a light bulb, which I don't know. I don't know much about 2-volt filament tubes. Maybe they'd look that bright and I'm just an idiot. But either way, it needs to be fixed. It doesn't sound good. It's not right, and it's not sellable right now. All right. I think I might have found my mistake if I'm looking at this correctly. So we've got the 3 electrolytic C31, 32, and 33. And it looks like 31 and 32 go directly to chassis ground. But C33 goes through a R19 resistor, which is, this is hard to read, mentioned as a 400 ohm resistor. And so it's not supposed to go directly to chassis ground. I miswired the electrolytics. I miswired one of the electrolytics, and it happens to be one that goes to the field coil. And so that's probably why I'm getting that noise. Now, I could be wrong, but that's just my guess here. What is that going to? All right, well, I'm going to pull the thing out, and I'm going to make sure that the one that goes to the pin 4 of the speaker socket goes through a resistor, not directly to chassis ground. That might explain something. All right, well, I didn't want to do this, but I had to pull this board back. Here's the resistor, and I wanted to see which side was ground, and this is hard to film. It's down there. So that means that the negative of this capacitor, which is currently going to chassis ground, needs to go to the other end of this resistor. At least that's my theory, and I'm not 100% sure if that's correct, and that's why I'm going to bring it up on a variac to make sure I'm not doing anything messed up here. The other thing is I forgot to replace this guy, which is the across the line cap, and I don't trust that guy to still be good. So I'm going to use a safety X2Y2 across the line cap for that guy. So here we go. Wish me luck. It seems straightforward enough on that schematic, but truth be known, sometimes I feel like I'm dyslexic and I have a hard time reading schematics sometimes, especially when I'm not sure of myself. So I know it sounds stupid, but it's the truth. All right, I got the safety cap installed, and what I hope is the correct orientation of the electrolytic coming off of this resistor. I'm not sure of myself, so I'm going to bring it up slowly on a variac, monitor the amount of current, and I'm also put my glasses on, because if I put that in backward, it'll explode. I don't want capacitor shrapnel hitting me in the face, even though they do have safety vents, which will aim it that way. The old capacitors, I've had some of those old ones that don't have safety vents explode. I had one where the can like ruptured and shit like actually shot and hit the ceiling of my garage. That was it.
Okay.
Luckily Jimmy helped me a little bit, but yeah, basically the that one cap wasn't supposed to go to chassis ground. It's supposed to go through that resistor. Now why? I don't know. I'm not an electric genius. Jesus, it's fucking loud. Anyway, let me stick this sucker back in the cabinet and let it play for a little bit. Got all kinds of crap needed to do today around here. Something very exciting is coming later today that you all will be able to see later, which is in the form of a giant windmill. All right, well, she's back together again. Alright, let me unplug this and we'll try out the radio, even though for some reason the shop here acts like a giant Faraday cage. Alright. Whoops, wrong direction. There we go, standard broadcast.
Take those minutes in again, but really it's going to come down to the excellence of the players, and that's why if you're a Warrior fan, you got to feel pretty good to be only down 3-2. Curry's been pretty good, but not spectacular like we're accustomed to. Klay Thompson has...
I really don't give a shit about sports, but anyway. So I'm going to let it sit here and play for a few hours. For 1934, it's actually a pretty nice radio. Not push-pull, but I'll take it. Anyway, guys, I know this is kind of a crazy episode like all my other episodes. And hopefully I won't be a dumbass and leave a blank space like the last video. Sorry about that. Alright, guys, until the next time a radio comes across my workbench, I'll see you guys next time. Adios.